A grandson throws hot coffee on his grandfather. What Jesus revealed will change everything. Jason felt the weight of his grandfather's stare like a heavy coat. It pressed down on him as the tension in the kitchen reached a fever pitch. You think running away to chase some wild dream is the answer? Your degree won't fill your stomach, Frank bellowed, his fingers tapping an anxious rhythm on the worn oak table. Jason's pulse raced. Frank's voice echoed years of expectations he felt trapped under. The bitterness bubbled up. Frustration turned into a black cloud over his thoughts. This isn't what I want, Grandpa. He wants to follow a path that doesn't lead anywhere. Frank's voice cracked slightly, reflecting the deep-rooted love that still fought against the waves of hopelessness. In that moment of impulsivity, Jason snatched his cup, still steaming, and hurled it across the room. The coffee splattered onto Frank's chest, but it also splattered over everything sacred in their relationship. Silence swallowed them both. Excruciating regret tasted bitter on Jason's tongue as he faced the man who taught him what it meant to nurture family values, leaving behind silent wounds of shame that echoed louder than the arguments. Jason's hand shook, while his grandfather's eyes reflected a world of disappointment. After their explosive confrontation, the air in the house felt suffocating. He was alone in his empty mind on restless nights. Seeking some semblance of peace, he found his way to the town library. The familiar scent of paper and dust wrapped around him like a warm embrace, but the calm was deceptive. He wandered down aisles until he stumbled upon a weathered manuscript hidden behind a stack of forgotten stories. As he thumbed through pages filled with his grandfather's handwriting, a rush of emotion hit him. Frank's words told tales of resilience, recounting the sacrifices made for love, family, and community. Each story felt like a door, revealing parts of himself he had never fully understood. Yet, as he read, a new dilemma gnawed at him. The very ambitions he had longed to chase now seemed overshadowed. How could he forge a path of his own while honoring Frank's legacy? His conflicted thoughts whirled in a storm. He could almost feel the weight of the past battling against the lure of a bright, untested future. What if he could achieve more than just a degree? What if he chased dreams only to find emptiness? Would those stories of tenacity become tales of regret? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As days passed, the conversations with Frank remained laced with bitterness, and the manuscript consumed Jason's thoughts. Whispers of possibility tugged at his heartstrings, and yet panic clawed at his chest. He realized that as his town faced a looming threat from a developer, he stood at a crossroads. Stick with family duty, or leap toward ambition that felt tantalizingly close. Engaging with the community on one hand, and breaking free on the other, a battle of will simmered beneath, but could he reconcile the two parts of his identity? Jason locked eyes with the manuscript, heart racing, mind working feverishly. Would standing with Frank for the community be denying himself the chance at a dream? The stakes grew higher with each decision looming ahead. Would he fight for the life Frank had worked for, or break away, risking their bond forever? The coffee-stained fabric of their past hung heavy, and with uncertainty increasing, Jason knew one truth: he had to choose. Jason woke the next morning feeling like a ship adrift at sea, directionless and lost in a fog of his own making. Each beat of his heart echoed with the remnants of last night's showdown. He couldn't shake the image of his grandfather's hurt expression, vulnerable yet filled with indignation. The intense interaction left him both furious and burdened with guilt. The manuscript lay open on his desk, pages hauntingly reminding him of the disparity between their dreams. He grappled with the decision consuming his thoughts. Jason sought comfort in his art, a canvas stretched before him, unpainted and ominous. He picked up a brush and dipped it into blue, the color of infinity, uncertainty blending with desire. Each stroke brought clarity, yet the deeper he went, the more he exposed his own insecurities. What did he truly want? What was his responsibility? And could he amalgamate the dreams of both him and Frank? As the day wore on, he wandered through the echoing lanes of their small town and found himself halting at the old community center, the very place where his grandfather had instilled countless ideals. Memories swarmed him like bees around a blooming flower. He saw Frank teaching children how to paint, sharing wisdom on everything from colors to life's unpredictable brushstrokes. "Am I abandoning my roots?" Jason muttered, kicking at a stone on the path. It skidded into the gutter, splashing water up like the tumultuous emotions within him. His feet seemingly propelled him toward the center entrance. Inside, the faint smell of varnish and the rusting gym mats lingered. A group was gathered around a planning board, locals animatedly discussing the developer's proposed project, the very threat Jason had pondered. They wanted to save what was theirs, but it also felt like a trap, holding him in place like vines wrapping tightly around a growing tree. Frustration ignited within him, and he approached the group. "What if we do something different?" he proposed, the words tumbling out in a
What if we create an art exhibition that highlights our town's history? Show why it matters. It's a voice we can amplify. Some turned to him, eyebrows arched, caught off guard by his intensity. The murmurs of skepticism tangled with bursts of intrigue, familiar territory for him, but brand new nonetheless. Anxiety gripped him as fear of failure weighed down each word. Could he convince them? Was he qualified to lead? But Jason held a flickering flame inside, ignited by the stories of resilience he'd recently unearthed from Frank's manuscript. A voice spoke up, a local artist he respected. "Sounds ambitious, but what do you bring to the table, Jason? You're a kid with dreams, not an expert." The question stung, igniting a fierce determination within him. "I bring passion, the desire to honor our past while forging a path to the future." Silence hung in the air, everyone weighing his words. The challenge stirred something in Jason. Maybe this was what he needed. Not to fight against Frank's legacy, but to sculpt a new one that intertwined their ideals. He had potential. They all did. With strength coursing through him, he was surprised to feel confidence flow like paint merging on canvas. The battle was only beginning, but now he felt he could become an architect of change for both himself and the town. As discussions continued, an idea began to bloom. Could he rally the community to protect their home using both art and shared history? It was a risky proposition, but doubt was no longer paralyzing. He could hear the encouragement of Frank in the back of his mind, blending with his own ambition. Yet peace felt fleeting. In embracing this idea, would he find a way to reconnect with Frank, or had he thrust himself into an even deeper conflict? Torn between his aspirations and his grandfather's legacy, Jason took a deep breath. He realized this was not just his fight, it was a shared journey. As Jason walked home with renewed fervor, the weight of their unresolved issues loomed ahead. He understood more than ever that bridging these two worlds might mean confronting Frank once more. Would their relationship be reshaped in the wake of these decisions? The next conversation would determine everything. Nausas of uncertainty rolled in his stomach, and he braced himself for the clash ahead, knowing that this time the stakes were unimaginably higher. Jason awoke to the soft light filtering through the window, the morning sun illuminating the scattered art supplies that still bore the residue of his late-night revelations. The exhilaration from yesterday's confrontation at the community center clashed violently with the disquiet gnawing at him. He had stepped up, but now he had to live with the consequences. Today he would meet Frank. His feet shuffled across the carpet as he prepared himself mentally for their interaction. Over the past few days, he had concocted various scenarios in his head, practicing the words he longed to say. Each practice session ended.
As he layered on his clothes, Jason found his gaze lingering on the unfinished canvas. It felt like a reflection of his own life, vivid with possibility, yet marred by reluctance. With a deep inhale, he made a choice. The canvas could wait. Today called for action, not reflection. He grabbed a notepad and scribbled down key points, his vision for the exhibition, ideas on how to approach Frank, and the questions that lingered like shadows. Taking the familiar route to Frank's house felt different this time. Each step pulsated with a mix of anxiety and resolve. The neighborhood that once felt inviting now loomed large, a multitude of memories resonating with every turn. He couldn't help but wonder which moments would propel him forward and which would hold him back. Reaching the crest of the familiar hill, his pulse quickened. Frank was out on the porch, sipping his morning coffee, the warmth of the beverage contrasting sharply with the tension radiating between them. Jason hesitated for a fleeting moment, but took the last few steps with conviction, the rustling of leaves around him echoing his heart's tempo. "Hey, Grandpa," Jason called, forcing a smile as he approached. Frank looked up, and for a moment, Jason saw a flicker of the pride that used to shine in his grandfather's eyes. It was quickly extinguished by the shadows of the past. "Jason," he replied, the catch in his voice betraying more than he intended. "Can we talk?" Jason asked, taking a seat alongside Frank on the porch swing. The stillness enveloped them, a familiar yet uneasy quiet settling around them. "I heard what you proposed at the community gathering," Frank began, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Your ambition is admirable. I didn't mean to disappoint you, but I want to do something meaningful," Jason rushed out, unable to contain his ardor. "Art has power, Grandpa. We can use it to tell our history, to honor what you started, but I need your support." Frank's gaze hardened, and Jason felt the wall between them re-establishing itself, cold and sturdy. "And at what cost, Jason? Your dreams can't overshadow the roots that bind us. You're taking a risk." "I'm not trying to overshadow anything." Jason's voice rose in volume, panic edging on frustration. "I'm trying to build something that includes both of us." Silence stretched between them, clinging like mist. For the first time, anger breached Jason's guarded exterior. Rising from the swing, he jabbed a finger toward the landscape sprawl before them, the town they cherished, its heritage smothered by the looming threat of developers. "You can't keep holding me back. We need to fight for this place, not just hold on to memories. I want to see it alive and thriving." The sudden outburst hung heavy in the air, electrified. It held the weight of Jason's pent-up emotions, fury, desperation, and a sheer longing for validation. In that moment, his vision of the future collided with the traditions he felt were suffocating him. Frank, his expression unreadable, stared into the distance. "And what if you fail, Jason? What if it shatters?" The question cut through the air, sharp and cold. Jason's heart thudded painfully, uncertainty cresting again like an unwelcome wave. Perhaps failure was inevitable, but he would never know unless he tried, unless he found a way to forge a path of his own. "Then I'll own it," Jason replied, his voice steady, yet he could still feel the tremors of doubt. "But I need you to believe in me, in us." Frank turned towards him, searching, as if looking for a trace of the boy he had once nurtured in paint and passion. The silence that followed felt overwhelmingly pregnant with possibilities. "Maybe it's time we redefine what is worth preserving." Frank's voice was barely above a whisper, vulnerable yet stern. As Jason absorbed those words, a swell of hope pushed against the doubts in his chest. The conversation they had long feared was finally unfolding. But what would come next? The leap into earnest collaboration or another rift hung precariously in the balance. The realization stunned him. This was just the beginning. Uncharted waters beckoned, And, amidst fear and hope intertwined, Jason understood that the hardest battles were yet to come. But would Frank join him in this fight for identity and purpose? Would they navigate their way back to understanding, or would this dialogue reveal irreparable chasms? Every moment held its breath, waiting to unleash their story. The sun was high as Jason left Frank's porch, a strange mix of exhilaration and trepidation swirling within him. The conversation they had just shared felt monumental yet precarious, like standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind threatening to knock him over. He walked the familiar path back home in a daze, each step resonating with the weight of possibility. He needed to commit. The very notion of collaboration with his grandfather seemed daunting, but at the same time intoxicating. Their family legacy, woven through Frank's stories and experiences, felt richer than ever. Yet the path to merging their visions for the future was steep and littered with remnants of the past. Back in his studio, Jason stared at the unfinished canvas that had haunted him for so long. The colors seemed dull, almost as if they echoed his unresolved feelings. With a deep breath, he grabbed a brush and began to layer bold streaks of paint over the faded remnants. Each swipe was a cathartic expression of his desires. A deep red for his passion, bright yellows for the hope he felt during their conversation, shadowy blues to symbolize the looming uncertainties. As he worked, memories of his childhood sketches flooded back. Frank had been there for every stroke of inspiration and every moment of doubt. Yet now, in the wake of their heart-to-heart, Jason understood the importance of carving his own path while still acknowledging the roots that had nurtured him. He could no longer rely solely on the stories of the past. He needed to forge a new narrative with his own voice. After hours of painting, Jason paused, his expression morphing from concentration to contemplative uncertainty. The thought of reaching out to others, local artists, community members with stories to tell, overwhelmed him. Would they accept his vision or scoff at his ambition? The fear of rejection tightened its grip around his heart. But rejection wasn't failure. It was part of the creative journey. It was a lesson Jason was beginning to recognize. He picked up his notepad again, flipping through the pages filled with ideas and aspirations. It was time to define a structure, to translate his chaotic thoughts into actionable steps. Drawing upon the concepts they discussed, he began to outline an exhibition, a celebration of their collective heritage intersecting with his innovative approach. The thought ignited a spark within him. He couldn't ignore the creeping self-doubt, though. What if Frank pulled back? What if his grandfather's cautious nature prevailed, fearing for both their futures? Each mention of failure replayed in Jason's mind, more haunting than the last. Determination surged within him. He reached for his phone, hesitating briefly before scrolling through contacts. There, the old art club members, those who once gathered brimming with creativity and ideas. Perhaps now they could collaborate again under a fresh vision, one that blended tradition with innovation. The thought ignited a spark within him. He couldn't ignore the creeping self-doubt, though. What if Frank pulled back? What if his grandfather's cautious nature prevailed, fearing for both their futures? Each mention of failure replayed in Jason's mind, more haunting than the last. Determination surged within him. He reached for his phone, hesitating briefly before scrolling through contacts. There, the old art club members, those who once gathered brimming with creativity and ideas. Perhaps now they could collaborate again under a fresh vision, one that blended tradition with innovation. With each name he jotted down, anticipation flooded him. The start of something new danced just beyond his fingertips. He wasn't just working towards an exhibition. He was bridging the gap between generations, making space for community and culture. But as he prepared to make those calls, an unsettling thought lingered. What if he summoned his fears in the very act of trying to transform them? Did he have enough courage to face the full spectrum of responses? Genuine praise, bitter disappointment, or even indifference?
The air grew thick with the weight of his decision as he dialed the first number. This was the moment where he could either retreat into the safety of solitude or leap into the unknown, risking both failure and triumph. As the phone rang, he found himself on the precipice again, heart racing and breath hitching, ready to redefine the canvases of both his art and his life. What echoed in his mind was a guiding thought. This was just the beginning. How the people around him would react could shape everything from here on out. Would they see the potential he felt or dismiss his dreams as mere folly? The answer lingered just out of reach, a tight coil of excitement and dread intertwining in the pit of his stomach as he awaited the call's revelation. As the ringing stopped, Jason caught his breath. A voice, familiar yet distant, greeted him with a jovial tone. The conversation that followed began to reveal much more than just willingness. It exposed layers of vulnerability and openness he'd long kept hidden. He introduced his vision, detailing his desire to collaborate on something meaningful, something that would connect their past with his present. He had anticipated some skepticism, but what unfolded instead was an encouraging spirit. His former art club member was intrigued, asking questions that pushed Jason to articulate his aspirations further. With each word, he felt his confidence build, a foundation of trust starting to form, allowing the idea of collaboration to blossom. After the call ended, buoyed by a newfound sense of purpose, Jason immediately dialed the next number. The cycle of connection and articulation continued. Initial hesitance morphed into a rhythm. Like a conductor with an orchestra, he directed the symphony of conversations. Ideas flowed, enthusiasm ignited, and for the first time in years, he felt like a leader who could rally creative spirits. Yet beneath the surface, the nagging doubts still thrummed in the background, waiting for their moment to breach the surface. Could he sustain this momentum? As names were crossed off his list, Jason sensed a shift. He was no longer simply reaching out to others, but creating a network that wove together not just artistry, but shared dreams and fears. Finally, he set aside the phone and returned to his canvas. The vibrant colors now represented more than emotional catharsis. They echoed the connections he'd begun to forge. Each stroke felt more deliberate, guided by not only his memories of the past, but by the voices of those who showed a willingness to embrace his vision. It was exhilarating, yet the harsh tone of self-criticism still whispered in his mind, threatening to morph excitement into anxiety at any moment. The late afternoon light streamed through his studio window, casting playful shadows across his workspace. For a brief moment, he luxuriated in the calm. But this reprieve came with its own sets of questions. As he worked, he wondered what expectations would accompany this collaborative endeavor. Would he remain true to himself, to his vision, as he engaged others? Would it be easy to lose sight of his own desires in the face of collective opinions and criticisms? By dusk, Jason had filled the canvas with a bold backdrop, ready to create the focal piece that would tie the narrative together. In his mind, he envisioned his grandfather stepping back into the role of mentor, his cautious nature countered by Jason's impulsive creativity. Would this potent mix yield the art they both dreamed of? With a deep breath, he took a step back to assess his work. Admiration flickered within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by nagging clarity. What if the collaboration turned into a battleground between their styles? The distinct markers of his grandfather's iconic techniques mingled with Jason's contemporary flair, creating a stew of potential conflict. As much as he cherished his grandfather's legacy, the need to assert his individuality tugged at him, ready to erupt. Then a pivotal realization gripped him. This was not merely about art, it was about the complexities of their relationship. As the evening deepened, with scattered thoughts swirling like the paint on his canvas, he recognized the emotional stakes involved. Rejection seemed trivial compared to the potential fallout of miscommunication. With this understanding, he prepared himself for a conversation that could define not just their project, but their very bond. The question loomed, heavy yet exhilarating. How would Frank react to Jason's evolving vision, especially when it threatened to upend the traditional dynamics they had long shared? Gathering his thoughts, he felt the anticipation crackling in the air. Jason knew it was time to confront the very essence of his fears. The moment of truth awaited him, poised delicately between the past they shared and the future they could build. A future illuminated by hope but shrouded in uncertainty. Could he navigate this delicate dance without losing himself? With a firm resolve, he stepped away from his canvas and reached for his phone again, ready to make the call that could change everything. As Jason dialed the number, his heart raced. Each ring was a reminder of the stakes, echoing the complexity of his emotions. Would he find the words to articulate his vision? Would Frank understand, or would he cling to his established notions of artistry? The call connected, and Jason greeted his grandfather with a tentative enthusiasm. "Hi, Frank, it's Jason." "Hey, kiddo, what's up?" Frank's voice was warm, but Jason sensed a current of expectation beneath it, as if the old artist could already anticipate the conversation's gravity. "I've been thinking a lot about our project," Jason began, feeling the words tumble from his mouth, each carrying weight. There was a pause on the other end, almost too heavy to bear. "Interesting. Tell me more." Frank's tone was cautious, an anchor in turbulent waters. Jason seized the moment, explaining his idea of incorporating their contrasting techniques to create something innovative. He spoke of vibrant, unrestrained colors meeting meticulous brushstrokes, envisioning a fusion that honored the past while celebrating their distinct identities. As he spoke, Jason could hear Frank processing his ideas, yet the silence suggested reservation. Uncertainty loomed, filling the space between them. Would Frank embrace the change, or would the tradition serve as a barrier? "But Jason," Frank interjected eventually, grounding Jason's spiraling thoughts, "you know I've always valued the fundamentals of art. What you're proposing seems different. Are you sure it aligns with your training?" The question cut, stirring doubt within Jason. Would his growth be validated, or would he forever remain the shadowed apprentice in Frank's eyes? "I think it does," he replied, trying to maintain his composure. "Art should evolve, shouldn't it? We can break the mold together." Jason's voice wavered, revealing the turmoil beneath his resolute exterior. He realized he was not just defending a creative vision, but engaging in a battle for his autonomy. The conversation spiraled into a deeper exploration of their artistic philosophies, layering vulnerability onto artistic ambition. "Change is risk," Frank stated, his voice suddenly graver. "It carries the potential for failure. Do you really want to jeopardize what we've built?" The weight of the question sank deep. Jason felt the pressure of tradition pressing against him, the familiar roles threatening to suffocate his burgeoning confidence. He could feel the old whispers of doubt resurfacing, entwined with the fear of disappointing Frank. Would voicing his truth shatter their artistic bond? "I do want to take that risk," Jason asserted, finding his footing. "For too long I've held back, trying to fit into a framework that doesn't entirely reflect me. I want our collaboration to be a conversation, not a competition." A tense silence followed. Jason's thoughts raced, envisioning how this moment could tip one way or the other. Would he advocate for himself or yield under the weight of Frank's expectations? Finally, Frank responded, his tone softer yet resolute. "All right, you've got my attention. But know this, if we step into this unknown, we'll have to confront the friction. Are you prepared for that?" Each word settled over Jason like a warm blanket, yet the warmth was tinged with uncertainty. This was the push he needed, the validation of a budding artist, separate from his legacy, yet part of it. He had crossed a threshold. "I'm ready," he declared, his voice steadier than before. "Let's embrace that friction and transform it into something beautiful." A deep understanding had begun to bloom, a realization that personal growth often emerges from tension. But as the call ended, a rush of anxiety surged within him at the commitment he had just made. What if this vision disrupted not only their project, but their relationship? Jason understood he had opened a door that could lead to extraordinary achievements or profound discontent. Determined yet apprehensive, he sat back, contemplating the journey ahead. The stakes had been raised, and with them, his responsibility to navigate this creative and emotional landscape. The essence of his artistry now hung in the balance, teetering between his grandfather's world and his own. How would they maneuver through the complexities of this partnership? Would they cultivate a masterpiece together, or would it ultimately fracture their bond? In that moment of reflection, Jason recognized that the next conversation, the next brushstroke, could either deepen their relationship or carve a divide. The calling of the future beckoned, fraught with uncertainty, yet rich with potential. Could this collaboration really bring forth a paradigm shift in their relationship? Or would it crumble under the weight of conflicting visions? With hesitation swirling inside him like unfinished paint, he knew he had no choice but to pursue the next step into the unknown. The soft hum of morning enveloped Jason as he sat in front of his easel, a thin layer of darkness still lingering in the corners of the room. The early light painted a hazy glow, mirroring the uncertainty that filled his thoughts. He had spent the night grappling with the implications of his conversation with Frank, and as dawn broke, it brought little clarity. His fingers moved instinctively, dipping a brush into vibrant hues that felt vital and alive. Yet there was an echo of hesitation threading through each stroke. The canvas before him remained blank, a silent testimony to the internal conflict consuming him. Would his vision endure the scrutiny? Could he stand firm against the weight of legacy? The prospect of merging his style with Frank's legacy was exhilarating, but doubt clawed at the edges of his ambition. What if this partnership was an artistic gamble that shattered their bond? He thought of all those late-night discussions framed around tradition, the idiosyncrasies of Frank's work that had so inspired him. Could breaking away from those foundations mean demolishing something beautiful? Unresolved, he flicked his gaze towards the framed pieces lining the walls. Frank's work pulsed with life. Each piece encapsulated years of labor, thought, and deeply rooted philosophy. And yet, was it enough for what Jason craved? The thrill of innovation ignited within him, the yearning to craft a narrative that was distinct and unapologetically his. As he picked up the brush again, imagining a riot of colors swirling together, a knock at the door brought him back to reality. It was Frank, a surprise visit that set Jason's heart racing anew. He opened the door, instantly met with a swirl of emotions. Anticipation clashed with anxiety. "Hey, Jason," Frank greeted, his voice steady but his eyes scanning the room with an artist's keen observation. "I thought we could discuss where to go from here." Jason nodded, the implications of their conversation from the night before hanging thick in the air. "I have some ideas," he replied, his heart galloping. They moved into the studio, a sacred space now laden with tension. As they settled into woven chairs, Jason felt the urgency of the moment. Frank leaned forward, studying him intently. "Listen, I've been thinking. You're passionate about change, and I admire that. But are you prepared to confront the criticism? Not just from the outside world, but from our own creative minds?" The question ricocheted off the walls of Jason's mind. Yes, criticism was part of the landscape, but the internal struggle, convincing himself that his vision was worthy, loomed larger. "I know the risks, Frank," he asserted, feeling a surge of defiance. But isn't the essence of art about pushing boundaries? Isn't that our responsibility? Frank's expression shifted, revealing an unexpected vulnerability. He seemed to be reconciling the weight of his own artistic beliefs against a deep-seated fear of loss. I get that, but embracing change can be isolating. I want us to succeed together, but you might find it hard to navigate this on your own. A pause settled between them, heavy with unspoken fears and aspirations. The silence weighed on Jason, forcing him to confront his own reality. Did he truly want this collaboration, or was he merely yearning for approval? Would pursuing his vision trump the relationship they shared? As Jason prepared to articulate his thoughts, the cocoon of certainty he had woven around himself began to unravel. He started, but the words faltered. A deep breath fueled a new surge of clarity, and he pushed forward. I need to forge my own path, and I hope you'll come along, but I understand that it may change things between us. Frank's gaze hardened momentarily, then softened as he nodded slowly. I suppose change can lead to growth, sometimes in unexpected ways. He hesitated, then spoke again. What if we take it one step at a time? Yeah, that sounds good, Jason breathed, a flicker of relief illuminating his thoughts. He could feel the beginning of a new understanding bridging the gap, but he knew both of them would need to tread carefully. As they discussed colors, strokes, and their collaboration, Jason sensed the budding shift between them. Yet, the foundation of their creative bond felt unsettlingly fragile, and he questioned how deeply they could really merge their visions without losing themselves. Now, with the canvas awaiting their artistic explorations, they each had much to confront beyond the realm of paint and brush. What lies ahead could redefine not only their artistic identities, but also the nature of their relationship in ways far beyond Jason's initial imagination. Would they transfigure their creative tension into a magnum opus, or would their pursuits highlight irreconcilable differences? As Jason's pulse quickened with both excitement and trepidation, he found himself gripping the brush tightly, uncertain yet impelled to leap into this new wave of collaboration. As the hours slipped away, Jason sat at his easel, the weight of the conversation with Frank looming over him. Strokes of color began to adorn the previously blank canvas, but still uncertainty lingered in every brushstroke. He layered pigments, blending the vibrancy of reds with the calm of blues, desperately trying to mirror the chaotic emotions swirling within him. Each swirl felt like a tether, an attempt to anchor himself amidst the churn of doubt and expectation. Yet, in a moment of frustration, Jason wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, smudging more paint across his skin than the canvas. The canvas before him morphed into an abstract of his confusion, and despite his artistic instincts, he felt trapped within the scope of Frank's influence. Pushing back the shadows of self-doubt, he closed his eyes to listen, truly listen, to the inner voice urging him to realize his own vision. What was his narrative, his unique perspective? Beyond the longing for innovation and growth, Jason realized that this was about more than just colors and strokes. It was about uncovering a hidden part of himself that sought expression. But how far could he go without fracturing the bond with Frank? As thoughts raced through his mind, Jason suddenly stood abruptly, his chair clattering behind him. He glanced toward the other works in the studio, pieces that had once seemed invigorating, but now felt like chains binding him to a path predetermined by another. That realization ignited a fire within him. If he stayed too close to Frank's teachings, he risked suffocating his own artistic voice. Wasn't it his responsibility as an artist to pave his path? Instead of agonizing over his next move, Jason sat back down and took a grounded breath, allowing a newfound determination to settle in. He picked up the brush with purpose this time, envisioning an evolution of style that drew from Frank's legacy but was distinctly his own.
He thought of the moments shared over canvases where Frank had encouraged him to find freedom within form. Responsibility and creativity were possible allies. Hours passed, and Jason began to see a semblance of his vision emerge on the canvas, a dance of colors intertwined. As he finished the initial layers, a sense of clarity began to sweep over him. In the bright swirl of paint, he found himself. His fears, his hopes, and his longing for approval transformed into something visceral and real. It was chaos, beauty, and a reflection of countless conversations that had both challenged and nurtured him. Just as he stepped back to appraise his work, ready to embrace the risk of sharing this moment with Frank, a memory resurfaced, a particular discussion about vulnerability. Frank had often insisted that true artistry was rooted in raw exposure. With that thought, Jason's heart raced again, not from fear, but from an adrenaline-fueled anticipation of the unknown. He cleaned his brushes with haste and headed toward the door of the studio, ready to seek out Frank. Yet, as he pulled open the door, he was met with an unexpected sight. A small gathering of artists from the community, each one looking to showcase their latest pieces. Each one determined to carve out their identity despite their mentor's shadow. Jason felt the weight of their aspirations, each one aflame with creativity and a desire for recognition just like his own. Would he be brave enough to open up, to be honest about his struggles and aspirations in the face of all these eyes? Before he could lose his nerve, he stepped outside, ready to share his journey, not only with Frank, but with a wider world that awaited his unique voice. The fabric of his artistic destiny was woven through the tapestry of another's influence, yet remained rich with his individual threads. But as he looked at the eager faces before him, a realization struck him like a bucket of cold water. Now, he had to confront what it truly meant to embrace vulnerability. How would these artists respond to the authenticity he was about to unleash? With a deep breath, Jason stepped forward, ready to reveal not just his artwork, but the complex story stitched into every stroke. Would he be met with understanding and encouragement, or would they turn away? The moment of truth had arrived, and with it, a chance not just to elevate his art, but to redefine his connections
With those around him. Standing at the threshold, Jason felt an invisible barrier between himself and the vibrant tapestry of artists surrounding him. Each one was steeped in their own narrative, and though the air crackled with excitement, he sensed an undercurrent of scrutiny beneath it all. Could he rise to meet their expectations while honoring his own identity? With a resolute breath, he stepped into the circle, the ground beneath him both familiar and foreign. As he maneuvered through clusters of artists engaged in animated discussions, he felt a tightening in his chest, a mingling of anxiety and exhilaration. This was his opportunity to break free of Frank's shadow and to ignite his own flame. But the fear of rejection loomed large. "Hey, Jason," a voice called out. It was Mia, a fellow artist whose bright personality often cast a cheerful light in the studio. She waved him over. "What are you working on? I saw Frank peeking over your shoulder earlier. Is it something good?" The question rang out like a challenge, igniting his resolve. Here was an opening, but he hesitated, clutching the edges of his paint-smeared shirt. He could feel their eyes turning toward him, waiting and wondering. Was he ready to expose the rawness within? "I just finished a piece," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "It's different, a bit personal. I think it should uncover something deeper." A tentative smile crept onto his face, reinforced by the weight of vulnerability. "Let's see it," Mia exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Others turned their attention toward him, their expressions a mix of encouragement and curiosity. Jason felt a rush of determination. He hadn't merely created an artwork, he had unleashed a part of himself onto that canvas, a reflection of his journey. Slowly, he reached for his phone, retrieving a snapshot of the canvas captured in its early stages. Displaying it felt like shedding a second skin. "Here," he announced, his voice rising above the whispers that had come to life. "I called it emergence. It showcases the struggle between expectation and identity." He noticed silence enveloping the group as they examined the image. The expressive swirls of color danced before them, vivid and turbulent, pulling them into the very essence of his internal battle. "I love the energy here," one artist chimed in. "It feels alive." Another murmured, "The colors are so bold. They're hauntingly beautiful." Flashes of validation ignited within Jason, fueling a growing confidence. Each compliment chipped away at the walls he had built, softening the edges of his insecurity. But still, he felt the need to vocalize the deeper essence of his work. "This piece," he cleared his throat, tasting the unfamiliar taste of authenticity. "It reflects my journey with expectation, of trying to blend into the mold of what others want from me." His heart pounded with each word. "But it's also about finding my voice in that chaos, embracing the vulnerability that comes with true self-expression." A touch of silence swept through the crowd. They seemed to absorb his words. Then, unexpectedly, a desire for connection swelled within him. "What do you think about vulnerability as artists? Is it something we truly embrace, or do we hide behind our creations?" As he posed the question, the crowd shifted, their expressions morphing from admiration to contemplation. They understood the complexity of the struggle he laid bare, an artistic dilemma mirrored in their own experiences. Jason had unknowingly invited each of them into the conversation, creating a bridge through shared challenges. But the moment felt fragile, the conversation teetering on a precipice of deeper connection. As discussion sparked and flowed, Jason had taken the first step toward not just self-expression, but collaboration and shared understanding. Yet, lurking in the periphery of this burgeoning camaraderie was the reminder of Frank's looming presence. Would he support this newfound direction Jason was carving out for himself? Or would he judge it unfavorably, reverting to his old ways of criticism? The question nagged at Jason's mind like a persistent itch. The time had come to confront both his mentor and his own fears. As the voices around him gradually faded into the background, Jason's resolve sharpened. It was time to seek clarity with Frank, a reckoning that would define not only his artistic journey, but their relationship as well. Would he find acceptance? Or would he be faced with a confrontation that threatened to tear the bond apart? With heavy footsteps, he steeled himself, ready to seek out Frank, knowing that the next conversation could either solidify his artistic identity or unravel everything he had just built. Jason stood outside Frank's studio, the hum of conversation behind him contrasting sharply with the weighty silence that wrapped around him. The gathering filled with local artists had invigorated him, igniting a desire to carve out his unique identity. But now, the tension of confrontation simmered just beneath the surface. As he gathered his thoughts, he realized that this moment was more than just a discussion about art. It felt like a crossroads, pivotal in the journey toward reconciliation with his grandfather's legacy. Taking a deep breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The familiar sense of paint and varnish enveloped him, grounding him as he scanned the room for Frank. There he was, bent over a canvas, completely engrossed in his work. The way he moved, with both precision and an effortless grace, reminded Jason of the years spent absorbed in that same creative rhythm. Yet the differences between them now felt monumental. "Hey, Grandpa," Jason called out, his voice steadying his nerves. Frank looked up, and Jason caught a flicker of pride, tempered by the shadows of uncertainty cascading in their history. "You're back earlier than I expected. How did it go with the group?" "It was—" Jason paused, searching for the right words, unsure whether to leap into vulnerability or softer diplomacy.
It was illuminating. They responded well to my piece, and it felt good to share. Frank
Nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. That's great to hear. Vulnerability can be a strength, but it's also terrifying. A mutual understanding hung between them, yet Jason understood that the real conversation loomed ahead. Speaking of vulnerability, he began, his heart racing as he approached the canvas where Frank had been working. I want to talk about our collaboration. Frank sat back, crossing his arms, and fixing Jason with an expectant look. What's on your mind? It's about merging our styles, Jason stated, his voice resolute. I want to explore how your techniques can influence my vision, but I also need to own my distinct identity. Frank's expression shifted, and for a moment, Jason feared he had crossed a line. What exactly does that mean for our partnership? It means I want to strip away the fear of criticism, Jason continued, grounded by the support he had received from his peers. I need to explore without constantly checking back to see if I'm following your expectations. We have to both be willing to redefine our roles. An uneasy silence filled the studio, the air electrified with unspoken thoughts. Frank's eyes narrowed as if contemplating the implications of Jason's assertion. The silence bore the weight of years of tradition and expectation, each moment suspended in uncertainty. Jason, what you're suggesting could push us into unfamiliar territory, Frank finally admitted, his tone measured yet revealing his apprehension. The question is, are you prepared for that? Oh, I'm terrified, Jason admitted, the floodgates of his emotions opening. But I also realize that if I don't embrace this, I might lose myself entirely. I don't want to become just a replica of your work. I want to create a bridge that honors your legacy while asserting my own, and that's no easy feat. Frank's countenance softened, and a hint of understanding flickered in his eyes. I know you have the capability to soar, but soaring comes with risks. You're stepping outside my shadow. Exactly. Jason stepped closer, feeling the vulnerability coursing between them. I know you fear change, but I believe it's time for an evolution, a collaboration where we each grow. Frank took a deep breath, his eyes drifting toward the artwork that adorned the walls, their history displayed in myriad hues. If we venture into this evolution, things may change on deeper levels than just our art. Our dynamic has been so set in stone. I welcome those changes, but I need you to welcome them too, Jason urged. The only way we can move forward is together. This isn't just about my aspirations anymore. It's about us navigating this landscape side by side. A tension brewed in the room, yet within it was a profound kernel of hope. Jason held his breath, waiting for Frank's reaction. Would they step forward together towards a shared purpose, or would it solidify the boundary that had kept them apart for so long? Frank's gaze softened, and an unexpected flicker of acceptance passed between them.
All right, he said slowly. Let's explore this new ground. But I want honesty. If it's uncomfortable, I need you to tell me. And we'll have to work through the conflicting visions as a team. Absolutely, Jason replied, invigorated by Frank's willingness to consider this shift. It's a partnership, not a competition. Together, we can create something that honors both of us. As they began to sketch out their plans for their collaborative exhibition, Jason caught glimpses of the future. A future where their styles intertwined, where his colorful spirit met Frank's steady foundation. Each decision they made became a testament to growth, vulnerability, and courage. A mutual understanding began to form, weaving together their legacies into a tapestry vibrant with potential. Jason felt a surge of satisfaction filling his heart as they leaned into the process. It was no longer a matter of battling against expectations, but working to find unity within the friction of their artistic identities. In that moment, he realized he had not only confronted the conflict, but had also contributed to its resolution. The collaborative journey ahead would not be linear, nor would it be devoid of challenges. However, they were ready to navigate the richness of their combined stories. This was the moment Jason had long awaited, a breakthrough that encompassed not just personal growth, but the rekindling of a relationship that stood to redefine both their lives. Today marked an authentic commitment to artistry and fellowship, an exploration of self that was both intimate and expansive. With palpable excitement filling the air, they began to paint their canvas of possibilities, and as the first strokes came together, Jason knew once and for all, he had achieved the harmony between personal ambition and the legacy of family that he had sought all along. Now, as you've experienced the growth and transformation unfold before your eyes, you need to subscribe now to the channel for more exclusive emotional stories that inspire personal overcoming. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show that you support incredible narratives of transformation. Comment below with your thoughts on this journey and what you think the future holds for Jason and Frank. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could benefit from witnessing this conclusion.